The house stood alone, old, ominous. A shroud of fog clung to its rotting timbers. Daniel shivered. He shouldn't have taken this dare. He cautiously approached the front steps, each one creaking under his weight. The air grew colder. A low, mournful howl echoed from the woods behind. Daniel hesitated. He was beginning to regret this adventure. The front door groaned open, revealing a cavernous hall. Dust motes danced in the single beam of moonlight, piercing the gloom. The air was heavy, stagnant. The scent of decay lingered. Daniel took a hesitant step inside. The floorboards groaned in protest. He froze, listening. Silence. He exhaled, his breath misting in the cold air. He continued deeper into the house. As he passed a dusty mirror, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. Just your imagination, he muttered, wiping his brow. But a chill ran down his spine. He could have sworn he saw a fleeting shadow, tall and gaunt, lurking at the edge of his vision. He climbed the creaking stairs, each step raising the hair on the back of his neck. He reached the attic door. It was slightly ajar, a pale, flickering light emanating from within. He pushed it open. The attic was a cavernous space, crammed with forgotten relics and shrouded in shadows. Cobwebs hung like macabre decorations. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The flickering light came from a single bare bulb, swaying gently. Daniel stepped inside, his sneakers crunching on broken glass and debris. The air grew colder, pressing down on him like an unseen hand. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. He felt a presence here, something unseen, watching him. A soft whisper sent shivers down his spine. He stopped, holding his breath. Silence. He strained his ears, but there was nothing but the creaking of the house settling around him. He continued his exploration, his hand trailing along the dusty surfaces of forgotten furniture. A child's doll stared up at him with vacant eyes. He quickly moved on, a sense of unease growing in his gut. The whispering started again, this time closer, a low murmur that seemed to emanate from the shadows themselves. He couldn't make out the words, but the voice sent chills down his spine. It was a voice filled with sorrow, with anger, with an unspeakable longing. He stumbled upon a cheval glass, its surface clouded with age. As he neared it, he saw a figure reflected back at him. But it wasn't him. The figure was tall and gaunt, with long, sharp fingers and eyes that burned with an eerie green light. Its face was pale and drawn, twisted into a grotesque mockery of a smile. A gasp escaped Daniel's lips. The figure lunged, its skeletal hand reaching out from the mirror's surface. Daniel recoiled, stumbling back in terror. He tripped over a loose floorboard and fell, his heart pounding against his ribs. When he looked back at the mirror, it was empty. His reflection stared back at him, his face pale and frightened. He scrambled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had to get out of this house, now. He noticed a small wooden chest tucked under a dusty table, its surface covered in years of neglect. He knelt, brushing away the cobwebs that clung to the chest like forgotten memories. Inside, he found a leather-bound diary, its pages brittle with age, each one a fragile whisper from the past. The diary belonged to a young woman named Emily, who had lived in the house a century ago, her life now a ghostly echo within these walls. Her entries were filled with a growing sense of dread and fear, each word a testament to her unraveling sanity. She wrote of strange noises in the night, of cold spots and flickering lights that seemed to dance with a life of their own. She wrote of a presence in the attic, something dark and malevolent that watched her, that whispered to her in the darkness, filling her with an unshakable terror. As Daniel read on, he felt a growing sense of unease, the words seeping into his mind like a slow poison. Emily's words painted a chilling picture of her descent into madness, driven by the unseen horrors that haunted the house, her sanity slipping away with each passing day. He could almost feel her terror, her desperation as she pleaded for help, for someone to believe her. Her words a haunting cry from the past that echoed in the silence of the attic. A cold hand gripped his shoulder. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. The ghost stood before him, its eyes glowing with an eerie green light bored into him, filled with a chilling rage. Its skeletal hand tightened its grip on his shoulder, its touch sending icy tendrils of fear down his spine. Daniel struggled to breathe, paralyzed by terror. "You will leave," the ghost hissed, its voice a raspy whisper that seemed to claw at the edges of his sanity. "This house is mine. You are not welcome here." The air grew colder, the stench of decay overwhelming. Daniel knew he had stumbled upon something ancient, something evil. Section 8. A gruesome discovery. He pushed past the ghost, his fear giving way to a desperate need to escape. The air was thick with tension, and every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo his racing heartbeat. He raced through the attic, his heart pounding in his chest. The dim light cast eerie shadows, making the space feel like a labyrinth of terror. He had to get out, had to tell someone what he had seen. The urgency in his steps grew with each passing second, driven by the horrifying images that flashed in his mind. He tripped over something, falling heavily to the dusty floor. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but he quickly scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting around in panic. As he lay there, catching his breath, he saw what he had stumbled over. His eyes widened in shock as he realized the gravity of his discovery. It was a human skull, its empty sockets staring up at him. Panic surged through him, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He scrambled back, his hand scraping against something cold and metallic. The sensation sent a shiver down his spine, adding to his growing dread. He shone his phone's flashlight on the object. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing more than he had bargained for. It was a rusty meat hook, its once sharp point dulled with time. The sight of it filled him with a deep sense of foreboding. A horrifying realization dawned on him. This wasn't just a random discovery. It was a piece of a much larger, more terrifying puzzle. This wasn't just a haunting. The air was thick with malevolence, and he could feel the weight of countless untold stories pressing down on him. This was something far more sinister. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, whispering secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. This house held dark secrets, secrets that were better left buried. He knew that what he had found was just the beginning, and the true horror was yet to be revealed. Section 9. Trapped. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He had to get out of this house now, but as he turned to flee, he found his way blocked. The ghost stood before him, its eyes glowing with malevolent glee. "There is no escape," the ghost hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "This house is my prison, and now it is yours as well." The attic seemed to close in around him, the air thick with dread and despair. Daniel's blood ran cold. He was trapped, alone in the darkness with a malevolent entity. The ghost advanced, its skeletal hand reaching for him, its touch promising unimaginable pain. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Section 10. Escape. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the silence. It wasn't his own. He opened his eyes to see the ghost writhing in agony, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. A blinding light emanated from the diary, now lying open on the floor. Emily's words seemed to writhe on the pages, glowing with an otherworldly power. The ghost shrieked again, its form dissolving into wisps of black smoke. The light intensified, bathing the attic in an ethereal glow. Daniel shielded his eyes, his ears ringing. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light faded. The attic was silent, the air still and cold. The ghost was gone. Section 11. The haunting continues. Daniel stumbled out of the attic, his mind reeling from the night's horrors. The air was thick with an unshakable sense of dread, and every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own. He fled the house, not daring to look back. His heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted down the darkened street, the eerie silence of the night amplifying his fear. He never wanted to see the inside of that house again. The memories of the ghostly figure and the chilling whispers were etched into his mind, a permanent scar from that fateful night. He told his friends about his experience, but they dismissed it as a prank, a figment of his imagination. They laughed it off, not understanding the terror that had gripped him so completely. But Daniel knew the truth. He had seen things that could not be explained, felt a presence that defied logic. The fear was real, and it lingered in the corners of his mind. He had seen the ghost in the attic. Its hollow eyes had stared into his soul, and its presence had been undeniable. He had felt its icy grip, heard its chilling whispers. The sensation of cold fingers wrapping around his arm and the sinister murmurs in his ear were memories he could never forget. He never returned to Harbinger Lane, but the memory of that night haunted him still. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind brought back the terror of that encounter. He could never quite shake the feeling that he had brought something back with him from that house, something dark and insidious that lurked at the edges of his vision, waiting for the right moment to return. It was as if the ghost had followed him, a constant, unseen companion. The haunting, he realized with a shudder, was far from over. The ghostly presence was a part of him now, a shadow that would never leave, a reminder that some doors once opened can never be closed.